TUFF SHIFT. Hello, world, and welcome to another episode of TUFF SHIFT, the podcast where we unpack all that goes into surviving the job and living the dream. My name is Patrick Murtagh, and I am your host. So for today's pre-shift, I kind of wanted to go over something that we've discussed a few times here on the show. I know that I have brought it up anecdotally. I brought it up a few times, both here and on the Time Clock social medias. And that's kind of like what pre-shift is about. That's exactly the essence of what a pre-shift is. For those of you who have not worked in the industry but are fascinated to learn all about this and why we bring up certain things, pre-shift is basically the meeting you have with your staff, with your chefs, with your managers, with your bartenders, before you head out in service, before you go out to greet guests. And you talk about like, hey, what are we focusing on? What have we fallen behind on? And you just kind of reiterate information that we already know, but just it's good with how certain shifts can all bleed together and become one. It's nice to review things. It's nice to talk things over and remind ourselves. You know, that's helpful in life too. That's why we have apps that remind us to breathe, that remind us to pay our bills, that remind us to stretch and drink water. And that's kind of what pre-shift is. It's not, despite certain experiences I have had in restaurants, the opportunity to reprimand and scold your staff for not knowing things. It's the time to gently remind people things that they should know. And if they don't know, which might be your fault too, it's your chance to catch it. So we're just going to talk about it. It's not about making people wrong. It's not about throwing blame. It's about getting on the same page together so we can have a more enjoyable experience here in a restaurant and also in life. Why do I always sound like some Hallmark card? I'm so sorry. So I guess I'll just get right to it. What I want to talk to you about, what I want to remind everyone listening who has ever been a guest in a restaurant, you don't need to know my name. Yeah, you don't need to know my name. You don't need to know how I'm doing. I know what I think you're doing. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt that you're doing it from a very sincere place in wanting to see me as a human. You're like, oh, look, I humanized a human. Well, I'm already a human and I'm at work. And so I appreciate the thought. But for the most part, not all people do this, but there are enough people who take this information and they weaponize it against their server, against their bartender. And it also slows down the flow of things, right? So when you know that my name is Sean or Sean Patrick, you kind of think that we're friends. And we're not. I'm here to provide you with a service. I'm here to make sure you have a wonderful time. But when you know my name, it kind of becomes a weapon used against me to kind of like get my attention, even when it's not your turn. Because, you know, I've said this many times, bars and restaurants, like life, are a shared experience. And you have to wait sometimes for it to be your turn. And when you know my name, it just, even if you don't mean to do it intentionally, you do it. Sean, oh, pardon me. And it's like you want to jump the line to get my attention because you know me better than any other table, which is not true. You just happen to know my name because you were invasive enough to ask it, which I know sounds ridiculous because this is hospitality, but it's also, again, like I've mentioned a few times, it's also transactional. It is hospitality, and I'm here to create a wonderful experience, but I'm also here to cash a check and pay my rent. And you're also not here just for me, and everyone else around you is here for the same thing. Like we can find the balance of it acknowledging it's transactional and making it feel like home. All right. So I want to, just make sure you know that I'm not a mean person. And I'm not like Rumpelstiltskin, like making you guess my name. I don't want to interact any more than I have to, not because I don't like people. I love people. And when I started out in this industry, that was detrimental because I spent so much time getting to know my tables that I forgot about the other tables. I got so invested in finding out people's life stories and this and that. And again, all the information I gave people then came back to haunt me because again, you think you know me, which means you think you get to skip the line. But this if you look around on a busy Friday, Saturday, even a Thursday night, everybody's in the same boat, and I need to be in the driver's seat, and I will give you the best service I can give you while also providing that for the other people you're sitting next to. So as opposed to just saying don't ever ask my name, which I really hope you don't ever ask my name, I will give it to you if it feels right, if it feels organic. I will tell you about my life if it feels organic. But I'm going to give you moments in which you can kind of read cues, right? Let's learn to read cues together. So I come up to you and I say, hey there, welcome. Thank you for coming in. I have some water here for you. These are the menus. I'm going to give you a moment to look over the beverages and the food, come up with any questions, and I'll be right back to help you. That's not the time to stop me and say, hey, what's your name? Or even worse, that condescending, how are you doing? With that breath, like on the breath, that how are you doing tonight? Like it's a heart conference. Trust me, I'm from San Francisco. I've done all the self-help freaking things you could imagine. I don't need a heart conference. I don't need to connect with you. I just need to get to the next table. So the cue is, I'll be right back. If I'm taking your order, that's not the time to ask. I need to get your order. I need to get their order because again, we're not reading the cues. We're just reading the room as well. And there's a bunch of other people. When I drop off your drinks, that's not the time to ask my name or how I'm doing. When I deliver your food, that's not the time to ask what my name is or how I'm doing. When your waiter comes by to fill up your water glasses without being asked, that's the time. That's the time to ask your waiter, hey, by the way, what's your name? How are you doing tonight? Because a waiter, well, first of all, if you have a waiter that is filling up your water glass without being asked, and even a bartender filling up your water without being asked, you have struck gold. That person has nothing to do at that moment. That is a rare occasion. That's when you spark up a conversation if it feels natural. When I'm coming in between courses, the best time to connect with your waiter is between your appetizer and your main course. When I'm resetting your table and I'm checking in with you just to see, I'm not dropping food, I'm not doing anything other than seeing how you're doing. That's the time when you check in with your waiter. And, if you want to see what their name is and how they're doing, all right? So I know this may not be the most thrilling or provoking pre-shift, but it is the most helpful. And I find, especially now with all these accounts on social media talking about what it's like working in the industry, so many people just want to be on the inside. They want to be on the inside of it and feel like they're part of it. Well, the best way to be part of it is to be part of the solution and not the problem. Don't slow your waiter down. Don't ask my name. And thank you very much. I'm fine. Let's keep it moving, all right? And speaking of keeping it moving, let's go ahead and keep this show moving. I don't want to waste any more time getting to today's guest because this has been an interview that I've been looking forward to for a while now. And I am so glad that our schedules were finally lined up in order to pull it off. A few episodes ago, we met Flair bartenders Lindsay Palumbo and Colby Ashton, whose name I said right on the first time this time and didn't reverse it like I did the 20 other times in his interview. And they are from the documentary Shaken and Stirred, which follows three Flair bartenders as they get ready for a big competition in Florida. We learn not only how they prepare and all that goes into honing their skills and nerves in these moments, but we also learn the history and the evolution of Flair bartending. Jesus Christ, featuring interviews with legends of Flair and trailblazers in the industry. And trailblazers who are shaping the industry now. So this episode is being released on March 25th, which just so happens to be the world premiere of this amazing documentary, Shaken and Stirred, at the Las Vegas Restaurant and Beverage Expo, which means if you're listening to this podcast, well, I was about to say you can buy tickets and head on over, but I just heard that that the screening of this documentary is sold out. Over 200 tickets gone like that. But don't you worry, because you can head over to shakenandstirredthemovie.com and you can purchase your own streaming of this amazing documentary. And let me tell you, having lived the life of a bartender, having lived the life on stage as a performer, seeing this documentary spoke to me on so many levels. I mentioned I am not a Flair bartender. I don't pretend to be, even though I can shake drinks while doing alternating jumps, split squats, which Lindsay and Colby assured me is technically Flair. So I do have some flair, but I'm not a Flair bartender. But it spoke to me on so many levels. And really, especially after interviewing Lindsay and Colby, I was just absolutely blown away by the amount of heart that they not only bring to their craft in this industry, but they bring to each other in creating this phenomenal community of bartenders uplifting each other. It's a competition, but they are uplifting each other. And you know very well, I talk about my time as a nanny and the amount of times that I've had to explain to a 5-year-old, it's not a competition, it's a collaboration. And here are two grown adults working in an industry full of children, and they are creating this wonderful community. So I urge you to go out and check this film. If you've ever worked in hospitality, if you've ever worked in entertainment, if you like going out and being a part of the scene, you are going to love this film. And today we are not only lucky to have an amazing bartender who has been featured in this film, but we also have the creator and director of this movie who has also served time behind the bar. So let's start off with the amazing Robyn Closson, who started her bartending journey in Syracuse, New York in 1999 before moving to Tampa, where she started competition Flair bartending. Why do I keep saying bartendering? I'm not editing this out, people. This is what it's like. All right. This is the joy of a podcast where she started her competition Flair bartending, which ultimately led her to Vegas to work at the #1 Flair bar in the world. That is, of course, Carnival Court. And she worked there for over 12 years with some of the best. She's traveled nationwide and even to other countries, competing in bartending, said it right, and Flair competitions. And after 25 years of countless interactions and experiences, she's currently working in animal welfare, saving shelter animals. But even though she's not behind the bar, her bartending journey is far from over. All right, get ready, because there is a long list of accolades in this introduction. Next-gen writer-director Deborah Richards is part of the new wave of Hollywood filmmakers who rose from the ashes of a post-pandemic world and started their film careers during the 2020 shutdown in 2015 while still in film school. The winner of 4 Southwest Production Emmys for her science fiction short Boy Meets Girl, and has since directed a dozen shorts and over 100 TV ads and web promos. And in 2022, she was crowned the Nevada Woman Filmmaker of the Year by the prestigious Nevada Women's Film Festival. And in 2023, her debut feature, Move Me No Mountain, was released on Amazon Prime and Tubi. Hey, Tubi's great. You can watch that for free and run up her numbers. In 2024, she completed her second feature, Shaken and Stirred, which is what we're talking about today, and is currently gearing up for its 2025 Film Festival run and release. Deborah Richards owns her own production company based in Las Vegas and is a founding member of 1905 Films, a boutique film studio focused on feature film development and production. When Ms. Richards is not busy writing and directing her own films and passion projects, she freelances as a writer, director, editor, colorist, hold on, let me take a breath, production designer, VFX artist, educator, and public speaker. Originally from England, she is a dog owner, a former bartending, said that right on the first time too, world champion, and a passionate advocate for the arts. Deborah Richards is currently in development of her third feature film, Scissor Mouth. Dear listeners, please welcome to the podcast the amazing and talented Robyn Closson and Deborah Richards.
Hey.
Hello, Robyn. There we go. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for your patience, listeners. I had to edit out a little bit of that because, again, my tongue gets ahead of my brain sometimes. But we live, we learn, and we rate this podcast 5 stars, regardless. Thank you so much for coming to the show today. Before we get started, I just want to share just how excited I am to have you here. I got an email from Danielle at 1905 Films, which is your production company, Deborah, and asking me if I would be interested in conducting these interviews to help with the promotion of this film. And I can't tell you what that meant to me because this podcast was started out as a way to kind of bring humanity to the people in hospitality. Having worked with some of the most talented and amazing people in my 105 years doing this job, I wanted to kind of show who the amount of talent that is holding the walls up of this industry at any given bar, at any given restaurant, and kind of create a community where we could all come together and lift each other up. And it kind of accelerated. I'm only in my 6th month of doing this and have had such a great turnout. And the fact that y'all found me to kind of collaborate together, that is exactly the spirit of the show. And I could not be happier. And doing my research on both of you, I am just in awe and impressed and beside myself with gratitude to have you here. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. That was so lovely to say, and the feeling is
Yes.
completely mutual.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. So let's get started, right? People are, if you don't take the microphone away from me, I will keep going.
Hey,
So
that's my line.
there we go. Kindred spirits. Let's start with you, Robyn. The first two
Okay,
questions are always the
sure.
same. I want to know what your gateway job was into this industry.
So non-Flair would have to be, it was just like a small little like college Irish bar. I was underage and didn't know very much about bartending, and it was just like I didn't know recipes and I didn't know how to make anything, and they were just pretty much like make it red. I said okay. Um, I worked at for Flair. Um, I started serving at Kahunaville. And Kahunaville is big in the Flair community. There's a lot of Flair bartenders that started at Kahunaville. And they kind of gave me the shot as a server. I started as a server, and they had a couple bartenders, and I said, I want to learn how to Flair, but they wouldn't let me bartend. So I would go off the clock, and they would teach me just some Flair moves. And they opened a store in Tampa. And I got to go down there, not as a bartender, but once I got down there, I started competing and I would start beating their bartenders as a server. So that's kind of how I got my shot to start really learning how to Flair. So Kahunaville was probably, I'd say, the place where I really got my foot in the door into bartending and into Flairing.
I love baptism by fire is, I think, the best. Also, providing people with the information they need, but ultimately just getting into it. I love that, and I also love because
Yeah.
I know how, especially straight male bartenders, egos are. I love that as a
Oh
server,
yeah.
you
So did
mop the
I.
floor with them, and I'm sure we have plenty of stories about that between us. Deborah, how about you? What was your gateway job into the wonderful world of hospitality and bartending?
You know, it's so funny. I was gonna think of one specific job, but Robyn, when you said that you were underage when you started, you actually brought something from my deep past back to my memory, and was actually my first job. So I'm going to talk about that, and it's so weird because I've done a gazillion billion interviews over the years, and I've never talked about this story. But when I was 15, I worked in a nightclub in the countryside in England,
Wow.
and it was called the Grasshopper. And my job, well, it had a restaurant during the day, and at night it had a nightclub. So I got a job waiting tables in the restaurant on the weekends, and they asked me, "Would you consider working in the nightclub at night?" And my job in the nightclub was to go around and empty the ashtrays into like a hollowed out coffee container with a makeshift coat hanger on it, and I'd just go around emptying all the ashtrays. But then when they got so busy, they would call me behind the bar, and I would, what we call in England, pulling pints. I would pull pints, and they'd be up here because I was 15, and it was
Oh my
totally
God.
illegal. But it gave me the bug for like the
Yeah.
bar scene and nightlife and the excitement of all that and the club culture. And there's a famous band from England called Orbital, and they're like electric dance music. And it was during that time that I saw their first ever gig, and that was at the Grasshopper.
Wow.
That that is quite a memory to
Hmm.
to forget about, and especially as a
Yeah,
filmmaker, I'm seeing it in the lens of Netflix. So I feel like there might be a story there, based on truth, and you can embellish however much you want afterwards. But I'm like, that is a 15-year-old getting her start behind the bar. I love that, and
and that was deep in the countryside, so there's like
yeah,
no cops, no, no nothing.
as only you can do in that part of the world. I have family in Ireland, and my first time going there, I was an adult. I was in college, and they had, at that point, smoking was prohibited inside the pubs, and and they closed at 2 a.m. And me being from California, I'm used to bars closing at 2 a.m. and I'm used to non-smoking. And so 2 a.m. comes and everybody's leaving, and I go to put my jacket on, and my cousin's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, the bar's closing." Like, "Yeah, not for us." And they close the pub, they pull down the shades, and everybody lights up at 2:01. It's hilarious. So I'm actually not shocked that that was your your first experience, which is also why I think there's a great film in that for you. While I have you, what is a tough shift that lives on rent free in your head to this day, to where you're just like, either the
Yeah.
tickets were nonstop, or you just, customers were relentless, that just lives rent free, that you think like, oh, thank God
I'll,
that day's
I'll,
over.
I'll keep it brief because there's two that spring to mind that are really, strong. And one of them was um, I got a job I worked at a pub in England, and then I got a job in South London at TGI Fridays. First, even though I was 26, it was my first like full-time proper job. And when I say proper job, I mean like I had to be there for 8 hours and couldn't leave, and it was every day kind of thing. And my first night, I just had a meltdown. I couldn't hack it. The bar was five deep. I had a trainer standing behind me, barking orders, telling me what to do. People were shouting at me. I didn't know what I was doing. There's all these cocktails you have to know. And I remember going out to the back, dark in tears, and calling my mother and saying, this isn't the career for me. And she's like, "You toughen up. You get back out there. This is your first job. You go stick at it." And I stuck at it, and here we are. But the other one that springs to mind is once upon a time I owned a bar in Vegas called the Red Room, and we used to have these theme nights, and it was a tiny little bar. Like the fire code capacity was like 88, but on a really crazy night we would have 400 people in there. And one night we had this big event called Freakus Maximus, where we had like a whole freak show theme, and there was a lady walking around with this giant python snake, and I hate snakes, and the power went out, and so everyone's sandwiched like this, and I'm trying to move through the crowd thinking there's a snake in here, there's a snake in here. And that was tough.
I That sounds like a nightmare. That sounds like, not only are we over capacity, but I have this giant snake, which is my big fear. That is awful. And I'm glad that your mom made you stick to it, because I think if she hadn't, we would not be here discussing this film today.
Absolutely. I was being such a baby. She was like, "You get back in there."
You get back in there. Get, as my mom used to say, get thicker skin. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Robyn, what about you? Is there a tough shift that just lives in infamy in your brain?
I mean, there's been a lot in the 25 years of food and beverage, but there's always been like this one, and it has nothing to do with like customers or anything, but I think we've all had those managers that are always just a little too tough on you when they don't need to be. So my two front teeth are fake, and now they're permanent, but back like 20 years ago they weren't. And I had a mishap with them where they broke. So I called and I was a server at the time, and I called my manager and I said, "Hey, this is what happened. They broke. Like, I have no two front teeth right now." And she's like, "Well," I'm not going to be able to serve tables with missing two front teeth. And she's like, "Well, can you do something else? Like, can you come in and host?" I'm like, "I can't host. This is Kahunaville. This is the same thing." And this was a very busy restaurant. Like we had 4 dining rooms. I mean, like hundreds of people in this place at one time. I said, "Well, I can't really greet people with missing teeth." She's like, "Okay, well, can you bus tables?" And I said, "No, I can't." "Well, I need you to do something." So we agreed on me sitting in the back, rolling silverware for 8 hours. So I sat in the back, rolled silverware, like in tears the entire shift. I had my friends coming back trying to talk to me, and I wouldn't talk to them. So everybody thought I was mad at them. Like, my GM finally comes in and he pulls me inside in like a separate room, and I told him what happened. And thank God he was a really nice guy. He's like, "Go home. Go home. I don't know why you're here. Like, go home. It's fine." So he let me go home until I got them fixed. Like, she was just a really horrible person. Like, I was there for almost the entire 8 hours. And then it was so embarrassing. I was like 20 years old. So obviously, like, nobody knew what was going on. And I was just embarrassed to tell anybody. They just thought I was sitting back there not talking to them. It was really bad.
I mean, and just like not even the lack of empathy, but then
No empathy
the
whatsoever.
the gall to be like, all
A
right, so you
gall.
can't wait tables, but can you come in and still work for less money, even though the whole point is that you
Yes.
should be at home taking care of
Getting
yourself. That is,
Yes. And can you
yeah,
greet every single person that walks in this building and give them a table? "Hi, welcome to Kahunaville." No, no, I cannot.
all for minimum wage. Like, sure, that it's been my dream. Like, yes, I love going backwards. That's
Yes.
absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that all of those shifts are over for you. I know that there's some tough shifts in everyone's future, but at least those ones are done. Hey there, just checking in. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. And if you are, why not leave us a 5-star review and a comment or two wherever you're listening to this from? And don't forget to follow us on social media at TUFF SHIFT Podcast. That's TUFF Shift Podcast. Everywhere. Literally everywhere. And just a reminder, gratuities not included, but tips are always welcome. And you can find our virtual tip jar at tuffshiftpodcast.com. That's TUFF Shift Podcast.com. All right, back to the show. Now, we talked with Lindsay and Colby. We talked a lot a bit about what Flair bartending is. And so for the listeners that may be newer to the podcast, or again, in the spirit of a pre-shift, just going over information that we've heard, so it's at the top of our mind. Either one of you or both of you kind of want to give us your 2 cents on what Flair bartending is to you.
To me, the easiest definition that was always in my head for years and years and years was Flair is making a drink with style.
Mm.
And that's it, which encompasses a lot because you can make a drink with style with just very small, simple moves and cuts and little tricks, or you can be like full on going crazy. But
Yeah.
whatever that means to you, it's very wide, and I think it's really difficult to say, is it an art or is it a sport? Because it's there are competitions and it's competitive, and then you kind of get into tautology and like what makes something a sport. Is it the fact that people want to compete and other people are willing to watch? And so it's kind of tricky to put your finger on what exactly is Flair, but I think just that very simple definition gives you a lot of freedom to maneuver within.
Yeah. And anything you'd like to add, Robyn?
Yeah, so I think because of working at Carnival Court, we look at it a little differently. We looked at it more as like a whole of entertainment because there's a lot of things that we would do behind the bar um, that we still consider flair, even if it wasn't just flipping a bottle. And I would still consider it flair. Like, so you can do it would it can be with or without a bottle. Like we can flare ice, we can flare tools, you can flare yourself, to be honest with you. I mean, it's true because there's some things you can do at a competition, and it doesn't have to necessarily be with a bottle. And there are like competitions, there are categories that has like um, objects, like different objects that you can use, and you can get more points for different objects that you use. So it doesn't always have to be bottles. We do like these little skits at work. And again, it didn't always have to be a bottle. Of course, people love the bottles, but just doing these little things for entertainment, anything you do behind the bar or with people to make them happy while you're making a drink, I consider flair. I think a lot of people think flair and they think, oh, I'm just going to flip a bottle. And it doesn't necessarily have to be. Is it majority of flipping bottles? Absolutely. But there are more things that you can do to entertain while you're making a drink that I still consider flair. Like I've gone to cocktail bars and I've seen people just sit there flipping tools. There's a bar in San Diego where I sat and watched this guy at the service well flipping tools and making cocktails, and it was absolutely astounding to watch. And he wasn't flipping bottles; he was just using like his stirs and his strainers, and I was just like, this dude is amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think there's a limit to what you can do that can be considered flair.
Now, is there a trick that either of you have noticed that people are always wanting to see? What is like the most requested or most like sought after when people come to a flair bar? Is there something they're like, one more time? Okay, I got to do this one more time. Is there any trick that just people it always brings the house down?
You know, it's been a while for me since I bartended. To be honest, it's been like over 15 years now. So I'm digging into the dusty memory here, but nothing springs to mind that it was like this move was a showstopper, and
Yeah.
people go crazy. I think, but it's funny. It's sometimes it's the simplest things that people
That's
would be the most wowed by,
that's
like throwing a
that's
straw
exactly what
against
I
a
was going to
field.
say.
Yeah,
Honestly,
that's
that's exactly what I was gonna say. Honestly, we can go do flip a bunch of stuff, or sometimes all it is like throwing a line behind your back and landing it in the drink, and everybody just goes crazy. Like it just be something really, really simple. I can be like, wow, I just did this whole routine, and all it took was just that one little thing, and that's really all it takes. It's just something simple that everybody really appreciates. It doesn't have to be anything big.
So I wanted to share this with both of you, which again, this was originally going to be my pre-shift because it's fresh in my mind. It hasn't made its way to the vaults yet. This happened just last week. I was bartend. What is with me today? I was bartending an event at a museum, which, as you know, if you've experienced or not, catering bartending is a beast of its own. For the most part, it's pretty simple and straightforward. My least favorite thing about it is the fact that you're cleaning your tools with soda water and dumping into the wine bucket. It's just like I love a clean bar. So other than that, it's pretty simple. And this shift was very simple. It's at a museum here in LA, and when the museum's closed, we can set up all day every day. But when it's open, we have to wait until it closes before we set up, which is not usually a problem. Except this was like a 500-person event, and we had 90 minutes to set up. You know, three satellite bars and all this and whatever, and we did it. So we prepare things ahead, and like it's wine, it's beer, it's champagne. That's easy. There were only three cocktails, and two of them were pre-batched, so that was easy. And the third one was a Negroni, which for me, I'm just like, I'll just fill up my tin with a I'll batch my own Negroni for that, because when you're having all those people to send on you, it's just pour and go, pour and go. So that's not the issue. We were all set up for success, and we're pushing our carts up there at 5:31 with like 20 cases of wine, all the product, all the glassware, and this bartender who's still there's still a 2 at the beginning of his age. So I'm like, I need you to calm down. Had a moment where he saw bitters on the cart and was like, well, what are these bitters for? And he had like a heart attack over the fact that they were bitters. And I was like, well, they're for the Negroni, obviously. And he just had this conniption fit of there are no bitters in Negronis, and a classic Negroni is X, Y, and Z. And I was like, uh, I don't know how this is like a thing. I don't know why we're having this conversation right now, because like there are definitely bitters in a Negroni, and like we kind of going back and forth. And he's like, if you look up the recipe, I'm like, I've been doing this for 1,000 years, and ever since I started bartending, I've been putting bitters in my Negroni. And so he Googles it, and there's no bitters. And then I Google it, and there's bitters. And I'm like, you can Google whatever you want to get whatever results you want. There's a way to Google to get your answer to anything that just doesn't compare to lived experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, like, it wasn't like I actually love him, and it wasn't like that deep. We had a fun time making fun of each other all night about the Bittergate 2025, which he was bitter about. But it brought up a deeper thing that I experience a lot and have experienced a lot. And I'm pretty sure both of you have experienced this. And it's something that I don't find in female bartenders, in gay queer bartenders. It's a behavior that really, and hashtag not all straight men, but a lot of straight men in bartending pick the weirdest hills to die on. And like the bitters being something that was just like so just like earth shattering, to where it's like, and they just like they go on pride. They bartend on pride and not what's in front of them. And they just, spend the time theorizing about, what bartending is, and X, Y, and Z of it, while the rest of us have already turned out 10 tickets. We're taking the orders for the next. We're restocking glassware. We're getting ice. Like, do you just please tell me, first of all, one, do you put bitters in your Negroni? And second of all, let's talk about the male ego behind the bar.
Robyn, do you put bitters in your Negroni?
Yes.
I do too. So I'm glad we're having this conversation though, because this is the reason we had that whole section in the movie about the female perspective of the hospitality industry. And Robyn and Lindsay had really good insight.
Yeah.
But it's also like on a bartending page, literally yesterday, people had this conversation about like Mai Tai. Do you put grenadine in a Mai Tai? I'm like, well, there's 2 different Mai Tais, so it depends on which Mai Tai you're talking about. Or the old fashioned. Do you muddle an old fashioned? I'm like, well, that depends. There's 2 different kind of old fashioned. But also it depends on what the customer wants. Does the customer want where I used to work, we didn't muddle old fashioned, we stirred them. But I did have somebody come in who wanted a muddled old fashioned, so I made it for them. So it really depends. Does the customer want it that way, and if they don't want it that way, then I'm not going to make it that way. So, and it's not the customer is right. It's just a matter of this is how I make it. But if you want it the other way, sure, I'll make it for you. I don't care. Like, who gives a shit?
We used to have a saying, the guest is always right until we prove them wrong. But
a guest is always right until they're not a guest anymore.
There you go. They say, treat them as a guest in your home. I'm like, I don't charge people in my home.
Yeah, I don't let people in my house.
Which maybe we're missing out on an opportunity, because I have friends over all the time.
No, it's okay. I used to have friends over all the time. I don't have any friends here.
And we both swapped out friends for dogs.
Yeah. I have 4 dogs. But yeah.
There we go.
So I think when I was bartending in my prime, I was always taught to, if someone comes in and asks for a cocktail by name, it's because that's their drink, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always worked in tourist hotspots like Las Vegas or Tampa or London. And so when someone would come in and ask for their cocktail, like, hey, I want a rum runner or whatever it was, I would always say, I was taught to say to them, hey, I know there's a lot of different ways of making that. Do you have a preference on how you like yours? And that was the key.
Yep.
Yeah, I think also too part of it is what's the task at hand? Again, like the sheet that we're working with for this event is asking for bidders. What's the task at hand, and what is it to you to just do it? Because I learned the hard way because even though I am not a heterosexual, I did get caught up in the ego around bartending. And when I first started bartending, I worked at a place that like was known for just making the most beautiful cocktails, traditional and spins on classics, and just like the art of it. And I got a little full of myself considering that was my first job. And then I learned the art of bartending there. And then the next place I went to, I learned the art of volume and how to function in that. And I was a bit of a snob because one time somebody ordered a Negroni, and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to educate these people. So I made a Negroni with Cappelletti. And the server was like, well, what's that? And I was like, well, it's a Negroni. And she's like, yeah, no, that's not what my guest ordered. I'm like, well, it's a better Negroni. And she's like, well, that's not what she ordered. And I was like, and it took me a while to be like, oh, you're an asshole right now. Like, you're being an asshole. And like, what is the task at hand? How do you find that in competition? How does that apply to you with dealing with the tasks at hand, dealing with judges, dealing with certain egos, and being like, well, this is how I want. How do you balance? This is how I want to do it for my sake as an artist, but this is how I also need to appease where we're at with this competition.
Well, here's the thing. Every competition has different rules. I don't think I had a problem with it, but there are definitely Flair bartenders out there that do. They and I've seen it happen because I've judged competitions where they're like, well, I did better than this person. And I'm like, well, just watching you as someone in the audience, yeah, it looks like you did. But if you look at the scoring sheet, this person did this for this category, and this person, did better in this category. So actually, they did better than you because they excelled in this category because they read the rules. Um,
Yeah.
like I know there was one competition specifically that I judged years ago where there was like a big situation afterwards where we almost had to, like, after we saw who won, we're like, shit, we got to go run and hide because we know they're all going to come bombarding us afterwards, wondering why this person didn't win because there was like extra credit, like, for the sponsorship, and this other person just blew away sponsorship and beat this other person who did zero in sponsorship, and they're like, oh shit. They're all running over to us like, how come this person didn't win? I'm like, well, because you didn't read the rules, that's why. And it happens a lot. I don't I don't think I had an issue with that because I read the rules and I know where the points came from. I was just never good enough to have anybody fight me over it.
Well,
But
yeah.
yeah.
And what seems to be a theme coming up a lot in this episode is you read not just reading the rules, but you read the room. And
Yeah.
that is there now. I know it's you have both moved on to other areas of your life and careers and professions. Deborah, I want to start with you, and I want to talk about how you made that shift from bartending, from being a bar owner to being a full-time filmmaker, and like not just a full-time filmmaker, but a Tough Shift first, our very first Emmy Award winner 4 times over. How does that happen for you, and how did bartending lead to this, and how is it on the other side of it?
Sure. It's really strange. I think I came to film late in life, but I had all the skills that you need to be a film director, and I didn't realize I was acquiring them throughout my life. It's a little bit like that movie Slumdog Millionaire. You know,
Mm.
when he knows all the answers at the end because of all of his experiences? That's kind of how I fell into filmmaking. I got my first Apple computer in like 1980-ish. I got my first video camera in 1982. I'm very old. I was born in 19. And so I then built my first website in 1988. I was a musician and a studio engineer when I was 15, and that was at the start of the desktop revolution, and all that kind of sequencing of music kind of led to nonlinear editing when video caught up. So I was already in good place for that. Growing up in the Middle East in the 70s, my father had the number one advertising agency out in the Middle East, so I kind of grew up with that in the background. So and my dad was from that kind of ad man era, so I kind of grew up with marketing and advertising in my blood. But then I kind of grew up with the desktop revolution and computers, and so that all happened, naturally in the background of my life. But then when I got to bartending, I would love bartending because I would tell, if people were bored at the bar, I'd tell them jokes, I'd tell them stories.
Hmm.
If people weren't bored at the bar and wanted to tell me stories, I'd be listening. So there's a lot of psychology that goes into bartending, right? There's a lot of, polish the glass, tell me your problems. And so I think when I made the choice to jump into film, I had all these skill sets from managing people, from being a bar owner and bar trainer and head bartender, to telling stories, to the technical skill sets. So I had all these ingredients, and it was like, wow, what am I going to do next? After owning a bar, and I was like, wow, I've been making commercials for my bar. I've been using Photoshop since it turned to color. So and I tell people I eat pixels for breakfast. So it's that combination of having that really fundamental, deep technical skill set that predates computers almost. Like with my father's advertising agency, they would use Letraset for lettering and tint, which is where you rub the pencil on the dotted sheets to make shaded areas of a newspaper and stuff. So my technical foundation was really really strong through from like decades, and then my creativity. Obviously, I brought a lot of creativity to how I moved behind the bar, but also the creativity of storytelling and listening to stories. And so it all just melded together, and it's like, wow, I've slumdog millionaired my way into being a film director.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to say, of course you're a filmmaker because that was the most beautiful description and really referencing Slumdog Millionaire to create that. Like, oh wow, that is amazing. And I also want to acknowledge, just obviously I'm clearly from California, just how in line all of this seems to just be naturally progressing. That like similar to what I said about the Google, your life experiences before technology. Like technology is a wonderful assistant nowadays, but it compares nothing to the life experience you created not having that. And I never knew that Photoshop wasn't in color, so that's pretty amazing. And what an amazing answer. Robyn, how did you find your transition out of bartending, which I know you say you're, and I agree, no one ever actually leaves bartending. How did you find your transition out of bartending into what you do now, and if you'll share with our listeners what you do.
So when I was younger, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian. Um, my path, my path just didn't go that way. I wanted to be a cook. I was cooking in school, decided I wanted to be more front of the house. I actually got a job my first two jobs in food and beverage were actually as a cook. So I was a cook for 2.5 years. Decided I wanted to be front of the house. I actually lived in LA as well. Um, there, I volunteered at an emergency surgical center. And then I started volunteering at a shelter, wanting to be medical, but then I ended up moving to Austin, Texas, working at a cocktail bar there. And then COVID hit. Like I moved there in the end of 2019. Then obviously the pandemic happened. One of my I was working at Nickel City, and one of the other bartenders there, like, told me that they were hiring, and she was thinking about doing it. Well, I actually applied. It was like a high volume spay neuter clinic and vaccine clinic. So I got the job there, and you didn't have to have a license or anything. They teach you everything. You didn't have to know anything, just customer service. And I was like, wow, shit,
Got
I got over
that.
20. Yeah, I got over 20 years of that. So I got the job doing that. It was full time and it was only 3 days a week, so I could still bartend at the same time. But I was working my ass off. But I loved it. I got to learn. It wasn't full service, but I got to learn a lot. And I ended up learning some surgery as well. We did surgery like on a bus. It was super intense. So I got to learn a lot about the medical field. Um, I ended up losing my job at the bar after 3.5 years because I
Mm.
was only working 2 days a week there. A couple of a couple of my bar customers. One of them is actually a veterinarian. She was moving up to Indianapolis to work at a shelter. So I called her and I was like, hey, I just lost my job at the bar. Like, are they hiring? Like, as a joke. So she calls me, texts me back a couple hours later. She's like, yeah, actually they are. They're looking for, somebody in their medical department. Long story short, I ended up moving to Indianapolis, and now I'm working here full time. I was working in the medical department for a year. I ended up getting promoted to the animal care manager, so now I'm the shelter manager at a humane society.
That's absolutely beautiful. There we go. And what is the name of that? Indie Humane. I love that. So I'll definitely put their follow information, their socials, in the description for this episode.
Sure.
So now I really want to talk about the genesis of this documentary and how you all came to find each other. My only thing that I was missing, and especially now speaking to you, Deborah, I just wanted a lot more you because you are so fascinating and have so many stories. But I also understand there's always that one family member who takes the pictures. That it's like, oh, wait, weren't they in there? Like, no, they were taking the pictures. So I understand that you have many hats to wear. But hearing your stories here, it's just like, wow, this is such a wonderful collection of human beings all in one
One
place.
thing, one thing that she has not mentioned this entire time is she is also a world champion bartender, Flair bartender.
Oh, thank you.
Which we will make sure I put that up in the beginning, and we're gonna put that in the
I'm
description.
blushing now.
So I
We
mean,
me, me and her used to practice together and practice speed rounds together, just so you know. And I have not seen it anywhere mentioned on here, so don't let her get that past you.
oh, so that
Yes.
whole oh, it's been 15 years is just a trick. It's just
Well,
to
that
divert
was that was
attention.
before that was before that. This is how long me and her have known each other.
How
That
long have we known each other? How long have we known each other? Like
Like
25 years or
almost
something?
probably 20, 25 years. 20,
Good
no,
gosh.
almost like over 20 years.
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
I want to know both of
Mhm.
your secrets. So not just the four-time Emmy Award winner, but the world champion Flair bartender. Deborah, please tell us how you came to this story and collecting these amazing people around you.
Sure. So, funnily enough, it started with a podcast a little over 3 years ago. I have two friends who are legends in the bartending industry, and are still very active in the bartending industry. And their names are Rob Husted and Dean Senils. And they run a podcast called Cocktail Network Live. And they wanted to have me on the show like 3 years ago, not only to talk about my contributions to the world of flair bartending over the 20 years prior to that, but also they were kind of curious about this new fun film life that I have. And so we were reminiscing about the good old days, I guess. And at the end of it, we said, wow, if anyone did a documentary about it, it should be us because we were there. And they said, yeah, that's a great idea. And so I said, let me pitch it to my business partner, Emmy nominated producer Patrick Murtagh. And we went out for a curry, and I said, I think I know what our next film is. And I pitched him, and he said, let's do it. And then it was great having Robyn Dean because I've been out of the bartending world so long that they really kind of gave us a legitimacy
Mm,
to enter into this world. And I said from day one that I didn't want to put Flair in a bad light. I didn't want to put it in a good light. I just wanted to put a spotlight on it and let the people who were there tell their story in their words.
mm.
So a little bit cinema verite, a little bit soft touch, and then we kind of powwowed and we said, well, who shall we get? And we wanted it to be. There were so many people we wanted to have in the movie, but you just can't. There's just not time. If you're going from one interview to another interview like this, there's no time for an audience to make a connection with the people. So it's very hard to kind of come out with a short list of people that we wanted in the movie. And
Yeah.
it was a lot of heated debates. And certain people push for certain people, and I push for certain people, and luckily I'm the director, so I get a lot of say.
There you
So
go.
I managed to, get the people that mean the most to me from that time in my life, and Robyn was one of those people.
It's an amazing collection of people. Everybody, I mean, I'm following them all now. Dario, the brother. My mind is blanking. The Depeche brothers.
Nope.
I
Yeah.
just
Open ship.
Yes, just I
Uh,
mean, absolutely a wonderful. Please, it's a conversation here.
mhm.
It's just really a wonderful collection of amazingly gifted people, and that doesn't always lead to good content. People can be very talented and not interesting, and y'all got the right people.
Well, it's so to give you some context on making the documentary. For example, Lindsay is in the movie for about 15 minutes, okay, because she's one of the leads. But we had 26 hours of her.
Oh wow.
I had 22 hours of Colby, 20 hours of Lorenzo, and then each one of the people in the movie that are just like being interviewed, I had like maybe two, like as little as 2 hours, as much as 4 hours of interviewing. So there was literally 36 terabytes of how do I go through, how do I weave this into some kind of story, and someone recently asked me what's the most this question comes up every interview, like what's the most challenging part of making the movie. And it's funny when you make a documentary that covers some 30 years of history with a lot of people that have known each other for a long time and a lot of egos. There's a lot of history between all these characters and these players, and as the captain of the team, trying to navigate that history and that ego between all these, amazing people, that was the most challenging part of the movie.
Yes, I not to say about anyone in particular, but I do agree that uh, we learn a lot. Like anyone that has the opportunity to take care of a child should, because you do learn how to deal with adults, and there are things that are just ingrained in us, and in that time in our lives, that those are still the tools with which we need to be spoken to and taken care of today. We need to be uplifted. We need to kind of, you know, be made to feel like we're important and valued. And a lot of those things, I know working in the restaurants I worked in, it is when I started nannying, I was like, oh my God, like this is where it comes from, and it makes total sense. So you have to meet people where they're at, which is, again, I'm not calling anyone a toddler, but I'm talking about the tricks in which we learn to talk to people. I'm really not calling anyone a toddler, I swear. But
Really
you
hard. Like seriously,
okay?
I
So
manage and it's really hard.
yeah,
Like
then I'll just say what I always say. Every single adult is a life, like humans are lifelong toddlers. So,
they
but
are.
but it's a skill in wrangling these talents, and I just really love, especially as your press kit says, it's the past, present, and future of it, and you could have easily done an entire documentary on any single one of them alone, but the way you wove their stories in, and this is where it's come from, and this is what we miss about it. This is when it was fun, and this is when it changed, and this is what these kids are dealing with, and that's all they've ever known. So they don't even know that there was a time when you had to tape bottles, like all these things that you would never think about. And it's like, Dean's the one who invented the bottle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is amazing. And he's also quite an interesting human being. I love his
Yes.
content. He's such an
He,
he I would
he's,
love I would love to sit at his bar because he's such a
yeah,
host. He's
Yeah,
he's
such a
yeah.
so
host.
entertaining.
It's,
He's
it's so
very
funny because
entertaining.
on a technical side, when you interview someone, we set up all the lights for Dean, and I have this beautiful lighting setup, and he's so wonderful because he's so animated. But then he's
Mhm.
doing all this in his interview, and the lights are he's going in and out of light and shadow, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this, but this is so challenging.
He could
Um,
definitely be an actor because there's not a single actor that can find or stay in their light. So he's on the right
Well,
path.
he hosts a lot and sees a lot. He's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah,
That
he's a great personality for sure.
He emceed my competition. Like I flew him down from Canada to do it. He's
what
great.
And you've been a guest on his show as well, which is when
Yeah.
Danielle introduced the idea of interviewing you, and I
Mhm.
immediately went to Google you. One, I was so impressed by that interview. Two, now I do it exactly the way you said you do it. I just separate egg whites the old fashioned way. But you had this video of all these tricks, and it was just like weird that I never thought about that, but like such interesting content, like all the different ways, like you're very creative in what you put out there. And also I found out that you were on Ellen.
Mhm.
Now, that is so cool. And again, we don't know if we can share footage or images from that, but I want to talk about that. Do you like on national TV? Were you prepared for that with your Flair competition, or was it a different level?
What do you mean?
Like, I mean, nerves, because
Oh,
I feel more
I
comfortable
don't.
in theater than I do
Oh,
on
I don't.
film.
I don't. I don't get nervous for that kind of stuff. I get nervous for competitions, but I don't get nervous for like TV or anything.
That well,
It showed because when you came when you were on that Ellen show, it was evident how confident you
Yeah.
you
were
you
on
just
it.
walked right into the segment. You
Yeah.
literally
Well,
walked into the segment.
we did a practice run for it. So
No, we're gonna go back to me saying how impressive you are.
okay.
Agreed.
I like that version better. And both of you are phenomenally impressive. And I really do hope that the world sees this because again, the world fell in love with the movie Cocktail. It changed so much of our industry
Mhm.
and our culture, and I just think so many people will get a kick out of it. So I'm going to start with you, Robyn, and then go to you, Deborah. Robyn, why should people see this documentary?
I mean, honestly, like there's so much about our like big small community that people don't know. It's a lot bigger than people know. It's like it's our life. I
Yeah,
do think it's not just a hobby. It's a sport. It's our life. It, people don't think we take it seriously, and we do. Like it is our entire life. When we're in it, we're competing. I'd love for people to see what we do behind the scenes, and it's how it's not just behind the bar, and it's not just the competition. Like a lot of people that come to the competitions, it's a lot of people like our friends. So I'd love for it to be bigger. Like it got big for a little while and then it kind of died down again. I'd love to see it get big again. And I'd
yeah.
love to see what we do behind the scenes and how important it is to us. I'd like to see more people get involved in it. Um, it's a big part of our life.
Yeah.
So it is who we are. It'll never not be who I am. And I know it'll never not be who everybody is. It's just,
Again, it's
it's,
contributing to the life experiences that will
yeah.
shape your future ones. And
Yep.
before I get to you, Deborah, I just want to say, because you brought it up, and I think you unlocked for me part of what resonated so much with me was as a performer, so many people don't see the hours I've spent training, don't see me running scales. Don't Yesterday, my poor fiance this weekend had to hear me like lose it over an audition which was not difficult yet specific. And so it's just like really drilling these things. They don't see the all the failures or the stress around it, to then be like, oh, you're so talented, it comes easy to you. And it's like, no, I make it look easy and you
Yeah.
make it look easy. Like everything you did on Ellen, everything you did on Dean's show, all the content I've seen of you, that I feel like watching this documentary, I understand even more. And as a, again, I'm not a Flair bartender, but as a performer, I relate it to the hours and the sacrifice and the, there's the wonderful moments, but then there's also a lot of
Yeah.
moments where it's like, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
So thank you for unlocking that for me. And if you're listening, that's another reason to see the show, to see the film. Deborah, what is it about, and completely unbiased, obviously impartial, what is it that you think people need to see this film for? What is the reason that they should go out?
Okay, here's the pitch. It is the world's first ever feature-length documentary about the world of flair bartending. Period. Okay, and a lot of people say, well, why hasn't there been one before? And I think this is just a general problem with the flair bartending industry as a whole, that it never really kind of, even at its peak, it never crossed over to something like the X Games
Mhm.
or an extreme competitive sport with high media attention, purely because you can market a skateboard to a 5-year-old, you can't market a bottle of vodka to a 5-year-old. So it never had that
At least
big
not in
breakthrough.
America.
Right. Well, my 5-year-old, you can't. No, I'm just kidding. Um, no, so I never really kind of broke through on the mainstream in that way. And so it's been underground. And what people don't realize is that these bartenders competing, they're studs. They go around the world competing for like big prize money, like in every corner of the globe. And it's fascinating because it's like an underground world, so to speak.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also someone once said to me, what do you like to film? And I said, anything that moves, right? Because motion is it's just entertaining, visually entertaining, and it's entertaining because of the people involved and seeing their struggle and seeing their hopes and their dreams and working towards something, and the spirit of competition and the spirit of fraternity. And I use the word fraternity in its correct sense in terms of brothers and sisters, um, and the solidarity within that, and so for all those reasons, I mean, look, if you like documentaries, this is a good one. I'll give you money back if you don't like it.
That sounds amazing. And just so y'all know, she won't be returning a single cent because it is phenomenal. So with that being said, Deborah, I want you to lead the way.
Sure.
Give us the pitch for this movie, where people can find it, how they can support you on social media, how they can stream it for themselves, and then also how can they find Deborah Richards and 1905 films. Here's your chance to let the world know.
Absolutely cool. Well, the film is available now for purchase. It comes out on the 26th, but I believe the show's going out on the 25th, so you can actually
Indeed.
pre-order it today for 10% off, and you'll be able to see it the next day. So you can stream it or buy it at flairdocumentary.com, which is the easy way to remember it, or shakenandstirredthemovie.com. And if you want to know more about me, I'm very Googleable, so just put my name in there. But I actually started up a YouTube channel 18 days ago, and I've been putting out 2-hour videos every day for 18 days.
Wow.
It's a daily vlog of just what my life is like as a full-time film and TV director, and it's absolutely crazy because it's long-form content. It's not edited really, and there's some golden nuggets in there. That's about 30% of it, and the other 70% is just garbage. It's just me working. It's so funny. But it's getting a lot of steam really quickly, and in 18
Wonderful.
days, I've already, got, well, I don't want to brag, but I've got a chunk of subscribers and views, and I'm like, who the hell is watching this? But if you would like to watch this on YouTube, it's director Deborah Richards.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. And the handle for Shaken and Stirred is at Shaken and Stirred the doc. That's on Instagram, right?
I don't know what it is on Instagram. I'm
Well, you
sorry.
know what,
I'm
listeners?
shapes and colors, not logistics.
That's what it is, and
Okay.
it'll be again in the description. Everything we're sharing here will be in the description on whatever device you're listening to this podcast through. You can also visit toughshiftpodcast.com, and all that information will be there too.
Amazing.
Robyn,
If you could like and subscribe my YouTube channel, but don't watch it. It's too cringe.
that's how I feel. We have to be better to ourselves because I tell people the same thing. I'm like, don't listen to the podcast. Just put it on mute and help run my numbers up. So we have to trust ourselves because clearly, if people are coming to you and trusting you, th- there is something to watch. And Robyn, I want to know how people can find, support, interact, and show you some love.
My Venmo is no, I'm just
There
kidding.
we go. No
My bank
shame
account
here.
number is.
Honestly, my stuff is kind of private to my friends. But if you want to hire me for anything, you can just get a hold of Debbie.
There you go. I'm now her agent. 10%, okay?
That sounds wonderful. And so, as we're approaching our initial descent, I always like to end this show in the same way. As I'm sure you've noticed with our collective amount of years together in hospitality, bad news makes its way faster than any other, if at all. And very rarely do the good experiences we have make it back to management or the people that need to hear them, which is why when I have a great experience with a customer, with a coworker, with somebody, I go try to go out of my way to let management know, hey, you know what? Steve was really great on this today. Nate, really boom, boom, boom. Or Niall didn't complain about bitters and Negronis today. I like to share that information. If you're listening, Niall, I love you. So, who is somebody in your life, in any of the hats you've worn, in any of the industries that you've been in, that has made a tough shift a little more bearable to you that you would like to shout out here right now?
Um, so I have my boss. He's the one who hired me. Um, I call them Josh moments where if I'm having a bad day, I just go in and sit down with him and we chat and kind of vent to each other. And I probably wouldn't still be working there if it wasn't for him. He's just a good, solid dude, and we kind of help each other get through the rough days. So
Mm.
he's my boss. He's my director. So probably him.
There we go. Thank you. And Deborah, who is someone for you? And again, all the many hats and industries you've been in that has made a tough shift seem a little more bearable for you.
I say this a lot, but I still got to give him props. My business partner, Patrick Murtagh, Emmy nominated producer, and him and I have been working exclusively together for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people he's my Jiminy Cricket
Mm.
because not only is he super kind, knowledgeable, smart, fun, um, I'm a terrible person. And he's really great at telling me, Debbie, calm down. Calm down. Think about what you're saying. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't jump on your first instinct. Think about it. Time out. And he's my Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder that keeps me sane and keeps people like you asking me back. So
Yeah, he also just had a birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
yeah, Patrick just had a birthday, and it's Dean's birthday today. So I just wanted to shout out happy birthday to Dean
Yay!
as well.
Wonderful.
Um,
Birthdays all around.
Birthdays all around, but yeah. Shout out to my Jiminy Cricket, Patrick Watts.
Wonderful. So there you have it. Josh
What
and
about
Patrick.
what about you?
Yeah,
Me?
who do you?
What
Oh,
Who's
about
your
you?
Jiminy Cricket? Who's your
well, I mean, especially after the hours of self tapes I did this weekend and the earworms that my fiance has right now from these auditions. Definitely my fiance Jeremy, who is just came into my life and full steam ahead,
Mm.
supportive, and that's who he is to all the people in his life. Really, it's quite impressive to his friends and his family, to our puppy,
Aw,
and to me, his neediest. Just a phenomenal person, and who I obviously love and adore because I put a ring on it.
that's awesome.
And he really
Good.
is just it's different having a partner like that. So
That's
yeah,
beautiful thing. Love is the answer.
Thank you so much for asking. And we're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna wrap this up by saying, Josh, Patrick, and Jeremy, thank you so much for all you do. You are so appreciated, and clearly the world needs more people like you. So this episode has been for you, and this has been another episode of Tough Shift. And just remember that tough shifts build character, and character is what brings your story to life. Take care. Tough Shift was created and hosted by Sean Patrick Murtagh. It was recorded on Riverside and distributed with Buzzsprout. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review and maybe a comment or two. And remember, tough shifts build character, and character is what brings your story to life.